What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're taking a look at Silent Hill 2, the remake here on the Steam Deck OLED in specific, and this is a game I played back when it originally launched on the PlayStation 2 and was excited to get into it here and see how it would do. Now, as far as performance, I'm going to use FSR 3 in the video, which doesn't work out of the box. If you just straight up launch the game, you'll only get FSR 1, so no XeSS or FSR 3 there. There is frame gen hidden away too, which I'm not going to use in this, but we'll talk more about that later. If you want to enable FSR 3, you got to go into the game's properties and go into launch options, and you're going to want to put in the Steam Deck equals 0 space % command space line here for your launch options. You can pause the video or whatever you want if you don't know this command. That's going to kind of hide the idea that we're on the Steam Deck and the game's going to open up the FSR 3 options for us, which is what I wanted to test out here. The image quality is going to be better than FSR 1 and typically performance a bit better there for us as well. And that's what I'm going to go with here. If you don't want to do that, you can use FSR 1. You can play with the resolution scaling and all of that for the game as well. So we're going to be full screen, 800p, no HDR, no ray tracing, no frame rate cap right now, although you may want to do a 30 FPS cap in the game yourself. And we're going to be on balanced FSR 3 preset and low for the preset on graphics, and I really didn't change anything else here. The game is very difficult to run, so I just pretty much left it that way. You could certainly play with that resolution scaling a little bit more, but honestly, you only gain so much out of it, and I don't want to lose all of the image quality considering what we're dealing with here. So here's FSR 3 on balanced with those settings, and if we want to switch over to, say, performance, which is definitely doable here, it doesn't look near as bad as FSR 1 does on performance. It's not bad, and you'll gain about 2 FPS. That's typical when you jump from balance to performance in most games, 2-3 FPS gain there. Now, if we want to go ahead and move that on up to ultra performance, which is going to look absolutely horrible, we'll gain another 2 FPS or so over that, a total of 4 FPS over balance, but really not worth it on the image quality. I would advise using performance or balanced here. I'm going to pretty much stick with balance throughout the rest of the video just so I can show you the performance of the game. It doesn't run good enough to show a bunch of different settings. It's really not worth going through a lot here. So let's get into how the game's really running here. Now, it's pretty rough in the beginning of the game out in like the forest area when you're headed into Silent Hill, but of course most of the game does take place in Silent Hill, in the buildings and stuff like that. It's about, what, a 10-hour campaign or so, so I wasn't that worried about it. Typically, once we get in town, it will get better, which we'll take a look at. Going in and out of these cutscenes isn't too bad. They all kind of stutter in and out and will typically render a little bit lower in performance versus some other areas. I'll show you that again later in the video, but they're fine. They work out fine. They're not like a pre-rendered cutscene as far as I can tell. It's all happening right here on the deck. And then we'll go here and we're in Silent Hill, and this is where performance can get a bit better and vary. You'll still drop into the 20s from time to time, especially if you've got areas that are loading in, but it will run in the 30s and sometimes the 40s a lot more often once you are in Silent Hill, but it does depend on where you're at and what you're doing. Again, you can activate frame gen, but the only way to do that is through the desktop mode and editing the game's files, or one of the files that way. It's something you can get into if you want, but for me, I just don't think the frame gen would feel good enough here, and oftentimes if you do get down into the 20s, that low of a base frame rate, frame gen doesn't feel that great, but it is a way to go unlock that if you truly want to do that. But yeah, performance inside, of course, is going to be even better than when we first get into Silent Hill. It's still going to dip from time to time, but look, you're not outside dealing with the fog and the draw distance and all that, so it's not too bad. Now, these cutscenes are interesting. We can run into 40s in here, but when we drop into the cutscene, it is going to go down into the 20s and bounce around there, which is pretty interesting. And once it's done, though, it will come back up to normal performance. This is like the first encounter you have in the game here as well. So yeah, not too bad as far as performance. I think as far as like what's playable and what isn't playable is going to kind of depend on the person that you are. I noticed those of us that grew up and are older and had Game Boys and Tiger Electronics and Game Gear and all that stuff find a lot of these games more playable than other people on these devices who maybe are younger and want that better performance right there, and and just aren't used to that. So it just kind of depends on who you are as to whether or not you're going to consider this to be like super playable. But I think for the most part, especially with a little bit of tweaking and messing around and maybe some patches and updates, I think it's going to be a pretty playable title here on the Steam Deck, in my opinion. And you can certainly continue to adjust things and maybe go play with frame gen if you want to go do those modifications and look that up as well. And there's going to be some mods too. There's already, you know, the DLSS mod and stuff like that. So there's definitely more to get into. But for the average person that just wants something easy to jump in, enable FSR 3, go for it. I think you'd probably be all right. All right, guys, thanks a lot for coming to check out the video as always. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.